Welcome to the lecture on Habakkuk. We're moving through the time period. Now we're into the late 7th century, which is the 600s, if you remember. And we're in the time of Josiah as far as Habakkuk's ministry. The title of the book, Habakkuk, his name means to embrace. His name is unusual for a Hebrew word, perhaps indicating there's some foreign influence on his upbringing or his background. Little is known about the prophet, but there is an Akkadian word for Habakkuk out of the Akkadian that means a type of garden plant. So in any case, Habakkuk has some sort of a foreign name, but the author seems to be a Levite, the prophet. He does appear in a pseudo-epigraphical work that's later, of course, called Bel and the Dragon. And this pseudo-epigraphical work is a work, extra-biblical work of stories about Daniel. And in it, in that work, the figure Habakkuk is taken by the Lord to Babylon to feed Daniel while he's in the lion's den. But in any case, that is, again, an extra-biblical work, but interesting that he's mentioned in that context. The date for the prophecy is around 607 BC. There's no direct internal dates given, but there are some implicit references that sort of help us to narrow this focus down. In 1:6, Habakkuk 1:6, it talks about the coming furor of the Chaldeans. So the Babylonians are coming, and this indicates that it's before 605 BC when Nebuchadnezzar comes to Jerusalem. There's no reference here of the city of Nineveh. So that tells us, no reference to the Assyrians and Nineveh. That means that it's after 612 when the Assyrians fall to the Babylonians and the Medes and the Persians, who helped Babylon to attack Assyria. Habakkuk's concern for the violence and injustice in Judah suggests the political conditions after the fall of Josiah, because Josiah was a good king, and he dies in 609 when Pharaoh Necho II is coming through Palestine to go support the Assyrians against Babylon. So it's after. Again, the remnants of the Assyrians, not Nineveh's fall. Nineveh fell earlier, but the last of the Assyrian Empire is over at 609. So, since Nebuchadnezzar again subjugates Judah in 606, 605, and there's no mention of that in Habakkuk, and Habakkuk's prophecy then fits best around 608, 607 BC. So it's really nice to be able to narrow it down like that. The political occasion then is Babylon is on the rise. The Egyptians have tried to support the Assyrians to hold off Babylon, and they're wise to do so because Babylon eventually comes after them and goes down to Egypt. Nebuchadnezzar is up there. Egypt gambles on helping the Assyrians at Carchemish and lose all. And again, Nebuchadnezzar's on the warpath. With Josiah dead in 609, Judah's next 4 kings, Josiah's sons, Jehoahaz, who is not the firstborn, he's put on the throne in 609, and he's deposed by Necho, and Necho puts Jehoiakim, who actually was the eldest, on the throne. And Jehoiakim is not necessarily a good king. He's the one that when he hears Jeremiah's prophecy, he cuts it and throws it cuts it up in pieces and burns it in the fire. So Jehoiakim only lasts for a few years, and he dies in 597. And his son Jehoiachin, I say it with a CH because of the American pronunciation, Jehoiachin, but they sound all alike, Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin. He is taken out in the second deportation, 597, and his father Jehoiakim's younger brother Zedekiah, actually Mattaniah, but they rename him, Nebuchadnezzar renames him Zedekiah, becomes king. So it's the third son of Josiah to become king, but he's a younger uncle of Jehoiachin, and the nation plunges into utter ruin and decadence, basically, through these kings after Josiah. So all of this is taking place. Habakkuk's talking to God about the coming judgment of the Babylonians, and he's questioning God about it. You've got 3 deportations that are about to take place. Under Jehoiakim in 605, Babylon takes the first exiles, and these exiles are Daniel and his friends, a small group, basically as hostages. And so Daniel and his friends go into exile to Babylon. Of course, we know what happens with them. They rise to prominence, Daniel to prominence in the Babylonian court, so that he can direct the Israelite exiles, the Judean exiles, to a good place and to watch over them when they go into exile soon to follow. So when Jehoiakim rebels, Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar comes back to Jerusalem, but Jehoiakim dies just a couple months before he gets there, and his son Jehoiachin, or Jehoiachin, if you want to say it correctly, in 597 just walks out, opens the doors, and says, "We surrender." So he's taken into exile, and that second exile then in 597 is the king, all the leaders. Ezekiel is a part of this. So this is maybe 10,000 or more are taken in the exile. And these are the leaders, the wealthy, the skilled, the kind of skilled workers, skilled people that you would want to come in, immigrate to your country, and then help your economy. Of course, Daniel's already in the court administration and all of that. And then the third exile is when Zedekiah, who is set up in king when Jehoiachin is taken out to Babylon, Zedekiah rebels in 586 or 88 or so, and 586, 87, Nebuchadnezzar comes back and he destroys Jerusalem and the temple. Only the poorest are left in the land, everybody else is taken out. So that's the political occasion, and this is what these events that are coming that the prophet Habakkuk knows about. He's questioning God. Why? How can you judge your people by a more wicked people? So that's coming. The spiritual setting then of all of this, the people were saturated with the language of reform, as Josiah was a reforming king, reformer, led people back to God, but they had all the language and the accoutrements around that, but they really didn't, their heart wasn't following the Lord. They denied the power of God, and they had a whole slew of prophets at this time that were talking to them, calling them back to God. We've already talked about some of them. Nahum, Zephaniah. We'll talk about Jeremiah, Habakkuk here, Ezekiel, Daniel. So all of these are contemporary, calling the people of God back to Him. The purpose of this book is to emphasize God's holiness in judging Judah, as well as His holiness while that He's using a more wicked people, Babylon, to punish His own less wicked people, Judah. But sin, no matter the degree, cannot escape God's notice, and judgment will come. So God will judge sin, even if it's of His people who are His covenant people, and He will judge them however He deems necessary, even by a more wicked people, who have also, and Habakkuk mentions, they have their judgment coming as well. So this is the purpose. Key verses, there's several throughout that you've heard before. The righteous will live by faith in 2:4. 1:13, why are you silent when the wicked swallow up those more righteous than they? 1:5, look among the nations, observe, I am doing something, you would not believe it, God says. And 2:14, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. Habakkuk 3 is interesting because it is a hymn, and in this hymn you have the Lord coming from Teman and the Holy One from Mount Paran. And this is down in the Negev, down in the Sinai region. And so it may be that he's coming from the direction of Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai, through through Timon, Mount Paran. He's coming from that direction in the south. So as he's speaking this hymn about God, God is shown as crushing creation, stomping on creation, and these created order, these things that he's stepping on, or things that are around him as he's walking through, and he has control over and power over these things. These natural elements are actually also the names of idol gods. So God is, in this hymn in Habakkuk 3, he is showing himself sovereign over nature, but in the minds of the Jews, the Israelites, as they read this or hear this, God is destroying, and it has control not just over nature, but all these idol gods that Israel's been following, and that the ancient Near Eastern pantheon is full of. So let me read this, and I'm going to raise my hand every time an idol god is mentioned by name, but the name is also some feature of nature. This is Habakkuk 3:3. God comes from Timon, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah. His splendor covers the heavens, and the earth is full of his praise. His radiance is like the sunlight. He has rays flashing from his hand, and there is the hiding of his power. Before him goes pestilence, and plague comes after him. He stood and surveyed the earth. He looked and startled the nations. Yes, the perpetual mountains were shattered. The ancient hills collapsed. His ways are everlasting. I saw the tents of Cushan under distress. The tent curtains of the land of Midian were trembling. Did the Lord God rage against the rivers? Or was your anger against the rivers? Or was your wrath against the sea that you rode on your horses, on your chariots of salvation? And that chariots there, could be an image of Baal, rider of the clouds, riding a chariot, that sort of thing. Your bow was made bare. The rods of chastisement were sworn. Selah. You cleaved the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and quaked. The downpour of waters swept by. The deep uttered forth its voice. It lifted high its hands. Sun and moon stood in their places. They went away at the light of your arrows, at the radiance of your gleaming spear. In indignation you marched through the earth. In anger you trampled the nations. God is stepping on creation and destroying not just creation and control of all this. He is destroying the idol gods as well. You went forth for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You struck the head of the house of evil to lay him open from thigh to neck. God is an avenging God here, and he is coming with salvation. And this may be also an image of where later in Isaiah it says God comes, he's covered in blood, having delivered his people by slaying their enemies. You trampled the sea with your horses on the surge of many waters. So you can see every time I'm raising my hand, it's a word that stands for, like Yam is sea, but Yam is also the name of the idol god who's like Poseidon, who's over the sea, that sort of thing. This is a nice hymn that shows God over creation and destroying the idols. And it's when they go into the exile that Israel finally gets over their love for and involvement with idolatry. They finally become monotheistic, serving God alone. So key concepts in the book of Habakkuk: sovereignty of God, holiness of God, justice of God, the victory of God, that he's approachable as well. Let's see here. You have in the book questions and answers in chapter 1. There's a question, God's answer, a second question, but then chapter 2 is pretty much God's answer to that second question. Habakkuk complains at first, he listens in chapter 2, and he prays in chapter 3. So chapter 3 is there a praise and testimony about God, as we just heard. Some unique contributions for the book of Habakkuk. Well, Babylon will be judged as well. Assyria and Babylon were used by God to judge Israel and Judah, and were in turn, again, judged for their violence. You also have the holiness of God in the book. Habakkuk is concerned about God using the more wicked Babylonians to judge his people's wickedness. But God will allow sin to run its course, and then he must judge it. He will judge it. If God uses vessels of wrath to accomplish his purpose, this does not compromise his holiness. It's him using these peoples as vessels, as he would use, as a potter would designate some for honor and some for dishonor, that sort of image. The whole issue of Habakkuk 2:4, the righteous shall live by faith. This is also found in Romans 1:17, in Galatians 3:11, and Hebrews 10:38. Perhaps, Habakkuk is called by some the book that started the Reformation because of those verses being used by Luther and the following Reformation. All of these points emphasized by Habakkuk, all of these uses of that passage stress a different aspect of the verse. That's interesting. It's an interesting study. There are several often quoted phrases in Habakkuk. Habakkuk 1:5, you would not believe it though it were told you. You might have heard that before. 1:13, you are of purer eyes than to behold evil. We've just mentioned, just shall live by faith. 2:14, I've already mentioned, and I'll come back to that one. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord. Woe to him who gives drink to his neighbor in 2:15. 2:20, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him. And 3:18, I will joy in the God of my salvation. Habakkuk, another interesting contribution here, Habakkuk has a daring dialogue with God. Unlike the other prophetic books, Habakkuk is more of a prayer than a prophecy. He dares to question God, challenging God's holiness and love. The questions are answered with questions at times for the purpose of identifying exactly what the motives are. And this sort of rabbinical method is also seen in the Socratic method. Jesus uses this sort of method, answering a question with a question. Helps to dig deeper into the motivation of the speaker. As far as Christology in Habakkuk, there's no specific mentions of Messiah, though there are implications for the Messianic age. 2:14, this idea of the earth will be filled with knowledge of the glory of the Lord is in a context of judgment. In other words, when this may be alluding to the Messiah coming, and judgment is coming, and then everyone will know that the Lord is here, and that sort of thing. And this is also that is also a quote from Isaiah 11:9, where Isaiah is describing the Messianic time frame. The exhortation in 2:20, let all the earth be silent, is similar to Zephaniah 1:7, Zechariah 2:13, and they are announced in the day of the Lord, judgment, at that point. So this is likely speaking of the judgment that's to come, this day of the Lord. Revelation 8:1 speaks about the period of silence in heaven before God's wrath is unleashed. So again, this is perhaps speaking of this sort of image that judgment is coming, and there's silence in heaven right before the judgment falls. So that is as far as Messianic, looking at again the coming of the Lord, judgment coming with Him when He comes. This is a little bit more about Habakkuk, and I'll see you next time.